to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is, as always, your host, Mike Bono. I have a great guest for us today. He has played football overseas. He was an MVP quarterback. He's won national titles. He's also played for and coached with former guest Hal Mumme, who was recently just on the show. But Stan Bedwell joins the show. Stan, thanks for joining, man.
Happy to be here, man.
Hey, not a problem. First and foremost, for people that don't know a lot about you, where are you from and where did you grow up?
Originally from a small town on the border of Arkansas and Texas called Mineral Springs, probably about 20 minutes from the Texas border, Arkansas side. About 1,000 people. Was there until I graduated high school and went to small colleges in Arkansas for a couple years, transferred 1 year to a school up in North Dakota, and then started the European career. And I played or coached usually both every year from '06 to 19 in Europe. And then came back to the States, coached college ball, and I coach college ball a lot in the off season of the year because Europe's usually spring and summer, and then I go coach college ball in the fall. And came back in 19, coached in Minnesota, planned to go back in 20, play again, and we had this little thing called COVID come up, and and that kind of derailed that year, but kind of worked out pretty cool because in 21. I got the call from Mommy to go work with him in the spring league. Got to play and coach there. That was a lot of fun. And then last year I got to play my last game with the only team in Iceland. One team there on the island, and they bring in teams from other countries to come play them. So went there originally to coach, and luck would have it, the quarterback got hurt, so I had to play.
That's how it always seems to happen, right? Next man up, always that mentality, right?
Yes, sir. But yeah.
So in college, you were a two-sport athlete. You played baseball and football, and you actually played for Trinity Bible College in North Dakota. So, what was the recruiting process like? You said, from Arkansas, Texas border. How did you end up in North Dakota? And what was the recruiting process like for that?
I was just there for one semester. I mean, my entire college football career was one semester at probably the worst college football program in the country in North Dakota. Uh, I was a bit of a journeyman in college. Went to Southern Arkansas University out of high school to play baseball. Ended up transferring to North Arkansas College, a junior college, thinking that I would hoping that I would get drafted out of there. And from a rotator cuff my first semester there, so missed that first spring. Came back, was there for the next year and a half, and I don't know. I never played very well, honestly. And so whenever I saw I wasn't going to make it in baseball, I'd always wanted to coach football. That had always been my plan. So I kind of figured probably my best bet would be to find any college that would take me to let me come be on the football team just to practice. I mean, I didn't even start in high school. At a school, we had 25 guys on our roster, and I didn't play or played very sparingly. But yeah, so I found a book. It was called "Keeping the Faith in the Trenches with College Football's Worst Team," and it was about this school, Trinity Bible College, who had lost like 106 to nothing or something to Rockford College the previous year, and Rockford was like a 1 or 2 win team or something. So I was like, I could probably play there, and yeah, so the head coach at the time, Jim Dotson, talked with him, and he brought me in. We had probably 35 guys in fall camp, and I started a couple. But how I got there, I sent VHS tapes of my limited playing time to tons of small colleges. I just went online and got their address and sent them VHS tapes because we didn't have huddle back then. And yes, I just sent a bunch of VHS tapes and kind of sold myself as an older quarterback that had at least I knew how college sports worked a bit, and had a few offers for some small schools, but I thought that was probably my best chance to play, and that's why I went there. And Um, Started at quarterback early in the year and hurt my shoulder not running out of bounds trying to run over a guy that was a lot bigger than me in like our second game. And so I ended up, I mean, we had so few guys that I was like, I could still play somewhere. So I ended up playing receiver and safety the rest of the year and did good enough to get all conference doing that. And our head coach, Coach Dotson, he coached in Europe previously. And one night he was just talking to me about that, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I went home and looked it up, and then kind of started doing the same thing, sending my limited college film to the European teams. And I found one that would take me. I went there, and I did really terrible. Actually, got cut midway through the season, and was like, "Okay, um, clearly I'm not a football player. I played since I was a little kid, and I started in more games in Europe than I ever did in any level in youth to high school." And I was like, well, I'm not a football player apparently. And so I was just like, yeah, I'm done with it. And went back home to finish up school and got an email from a team in Finland that was like, hey, do you want to come here? We'll give you $500 a month. It was Horry Bears where Mike Leach actually had coached many, many moons before that. And I went there and did really well. And next year went to Serbia, won a championship. And then the next year won a championship in Serbia. And then after that, I was getting offers from all over the place, and that's kind of my draw with Coach Mumme because after my first 2 years, I done okay, but that third year, I learned the air raid, and I went there and ran the air raid in Europe. I I think the most I'd ever thrown for in a season was like 2,000 yards in 12 games. That was a year in Finland. But then the first year in the air raid, I threw for like 569 my first game, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And ended up throwing for like 4,400 that year, and so I've kind of been a believer of the system since then and a follower of Coach Mumme and all of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember playing back in high school because we had it was considered a bigger school in West Virginia where I grew up, but being a receiver when I first got there, we were a running powerhouse I back team. We ran the ball 60% of the time in the games, and then come sophomore year, here comes this air raid, spread them out offense. And at first, everyone was against it. Like, no way, this is going to work. It's West Virginia football. Everybody runs the ball, powerhouse football, and we absolutely tore up with the air raid offense. And being a receiver at first, I was like, this is great. I'm going to get even more chances to get
Yeah.
in. Typically, we're only running two receivers. Now we're running 4 and 5 wide receivers. So it's like, all right, we don't have a lot of tall receivers in West Virginia. I mean, I graduated at 6'5", and
Mm.
yeah, everyone in West Virginia wasn't over 5'9". So it's like I got a pretty good chance of getting in the game.
Yeah.
But kind of like what you were saying, hurt your shoulder. I was a two-sport athlete in high school. I swam and I played football, and swimming was actually the sport I was better at and had more of a future in it. Well, as fate has it, senior year, I hit a sled and I separate my shoulder on the first day hitting sleds, and didn't know I separated and played the entire season on it and
Yeah.
missed my senior year of swimming and lost every scholarship known demand, except for one school, which was Bethany College in West Virginia, a little D3 school.
Mm.
And, they worked with me. So it was kind of like you. I had no plans to go anywhere for football. And I'd always told people, I think I'd make a better coach than I did a player.
Yeah.
And just never really came to fruition. But, it's led me down the path of being a comedian, which is always fun and a complete change of pace. But you take things that you've learned, and I know how hard it was playing and doing one sport in college. You were a two-sport athlete in college, so what was that like? Being able to balance two sports
I,
and school?
I mean, I was never two sports at the same time because the only time I played football was when I went to Trinity, and that was just for the fall semester. After that, I got out of there and went. I don't. I felt like if I would have stayed at the Bible college for more than one semester, God probably would have struck me dead
Okay.
I was waiting for the lightning to shoot down every day out there. But
Got in and got out, right?
yeah, I mean, it was a lot of good guys, and I still keep in touch with some of them. Our defensive coordinator at the time, who was later the head coach, Eric Slavoski, is one of my best friends still. And I held a big air raid clinic here in Bristol back in March, and had Coach Mumme and brought Matt Mumme and a bunch of those guys. And, I got Coach Slavoski to come and talk at that clinic, so still a really good relationship there. So I mean, I love the time up there, but I mean, it was really one of those things where you kind of act like you're a bit more religious you are to get into the school, and you're kind of sneaking out of the dorms at nights after the 9 o'clock curfew or whatever we had, and living as close to a normal college life as you could. It wasn't for me. I probably should have like bought into their ways a little bit more, and maybe maybe I'd be a bit better person right now.
It's funny looking back on things and the decisions you would make. So I definitely get that. But playing overseas, we've had a couple of guys on that have played football overseas, and I mean, you seem to do pretty well. MVPs as a quarterback, national titles, and and a Hall of Famer in the European Football League, from what I could see. So, what was the experience really like for you coming from the States than then going overseas? Because it's a completely different style of game, if I'm not wrong, right?
I mean, the wildest thing was just seeing, like, say, from when I went there in '06 to when I played my last year in 19, just how much the game developed. More than anything from a just technical level, coaching level that, when I first went over the first few years, it was really basic. And then you had, by 2016, 17, you're seeing all the schemes that you're seeing in college and stuff being ran on teams in Europe, and probably more Americans playing, definitely more Americans playing, and also more Europeans that are going and or playing college football in America, and then coming back with that experience. So I'd say the game progressed a lot over time, but the weirdest thing about it is probably that unless you're playing in one of the very best leagues, you'll have like a team where the starting outside linebackers are look like high school play, like small level high school players. Maybe one of them is only 17 years old or 18 and should be in high school. Then maybe the middle linebacker played 4 years in the NFL or something.
Okay, so it's a
And then,
mixed group of
the
people.
two deep tackles in front of them, one of them is a former Division I starter, and then the other one is that 17-year-old kid's dad who's been playing for 40 years on the team. And he's got like, I've had teammates that the rest would yell about not having hit pads, so they go and throw like cigarette cartons into their pants there for hit pads and stuff. So yeah, you see some different stuff over there, and the better leagues just ran really well. But yeah, some of the Eastern European leagues and things like that, where the game is still really young, it can be pretty wild at times.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, because I follow everybody that's come on the show, and sometimes it's tough to catch those European games on YouTube or wherever they're streaming them at.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal time over there, but it's 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning over here, and you're getting
Yeah,
up, you're watching a football game, which is weird to think about. And even when they play the NFL game in London, everyone's like, "Oh, you getting up to watch that game?" It's like, you know what? I'll catch the highlights on Sports Center when I wake up. Sunday's like my only day to sleep in ever. So, but
I mean,
it's
the Super Bowl was always terrible because you go over and usually would go over when you get signed, normally in January. So the Super Bowl is going to happen a few weeks after you get there, and that's always kind of like most American football teams in Europe will host a party in whatever their city is, usually some restaurant or bar or something like that, and you'll have a big showing of the game and stuff like that, and maybe there's a display with cheerleaders, different things like that. They kind of it's like the one day that they really celebrate the sport. But yeah, it's awful, man. The game kicks off at like midnight, 1 a.m. and it will be. I remember I hosted a party in Hämeenlinna, Finland, where I was at in 2017. That's when the Patriots had the huge comeback against the Falcons, and we're watching that, and then at like 4 a.m., the bar's like, "Hey, sorry, we're closed. Y'all got to go somewhere else to watch the game." But we had a ton of people there, and like the hotel next door let us go sit in some little meeting room and finish up the game with a few stragglers that wanted to come over. But yeah, man, it's late.
Yeah, that's got to be brutal. Starting a game and trying to get pumped up for the biggest game of the year at midnight, 1 a.m. I don't think I'd be able to do it. That would probably ruin the Super Bowl for me. I know that
And
much.
then guys got to, the game ends at 4:35, and they got to go to work the next day. So that's always,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's like one of the least productive days in security in Finland every year because so many of the players work security.
Absolutely. So you kind of did double duty in coaching and
Mhm.
playing. So what was that like being a coach and a player? You don't hear that too often. And did you feel like it gave you a little bit more of an advantage when you did get in the game because it was your coaching scheme essentially?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's why I had such a successful career was because I mean I knew the system inside and out, and I had the best seat in the house, being right behind the center. So I mean, it was never a. I think that I was a really gritty player. I know, you know, as far as numbers, I always put up big numbers, and we always won games. But I know that throughout my career, a lot of people, I was never very big, never very athletic, arm strength, nothing special. So I think that throughout my career, I was always kind of like knocked it. Oh, I'm not very good. It's just I throw to good people and they go score. And that's fine. I mean, I always saw myself as that point guard type guy. That's I wasn't the Russell Westbrook point guard. I was the Muggsy Bogues. It's just going to get it to the guys that are good enough to go score and let them go do it. And no, I mean, for me, it's, I don't think I would have been remotely as good or had as remotely as good of a career as I had if I would have had other people calling the plays and doing things. So, I mean, for me, it worked out really well. And, I got comfortable with it. And I would always try to hire a defensive coordinator that I trusted. And I wouldn't tell them anything at all about defense. I just let them do their thing. And yeah, and I think I was always a good motivator. I think that's something that I did really well with my teammates is that regardless of what I brought to the table physically, I think they knew whatever I had, I was going to give it everything once the game started. And the only thing I kind of regret from playing is that I didn't take the gym and things like that near as serious as I should have, and I probably could have been a lot better if I did that. I'm probably in the best shape of my life right now. I just turned 39 yesterday, so probably in better shape now than I was even at 18 or 19.
Yeah, I always think about that because I wasn't the biggest player. I mean, like I said, I was 6'5",
Mm-hmm.
but I graduated high school at 155 pounds at 6'5". So I wasn't the most
Yeah,
physically dominant receiver uh, to ever play the game. But I blew so many coaches' minds even in practice because I was that scout team, whatever they needed me to be,
mm-hmm.
and got beat up by the starters for 4 years playing high school ball. And at one point, my coach looked over at me. He was like, "How about you go and just take a seat for a second?" I was like, "I mean, I'm fine. I mean, I'm already." He was, "You've been getting your head knocked off the entire practice. I don't even know how you're still getting up. Honestly, it's
Yeah,
just you've done enough for today. Just take a seat because when the pads came on and the helmets came on, it's a different type of work ethic when you're not the most physically dominant. You have to be that gritty player that's just going to go and do whatever needs to be done. And you can't get hurt. That was one thing I realized, is that I couldn't get hurt, because then that just diminished any playing time that I could possibly.
Yeah, in the spring league, because that was a really short season. We just played 6 games, and I mean, from a physical standpoint, I didn't belong. All the most of the guys were guys that have been in NFL camps, things like that. Most of the guys were early to mid 20s, and I was 36 at the time, I believe. And the next youngest for me was Ryan, or the next oldest for me was Ryan Mallett, who recently passed, Arkansas legend. But Ryan was like 5 years younger than me, so I was by far the oldest guy, and I was so out of shape when Coach Mumme called me and was like, "Yeah, you got to play." He's like, "I want you to come coach for me, but you got to be our backup quarterback too." And I was like, probably the worst shape I'd ever been in. And I was like, "How long do I have?" And he's like, "A week." Shit. So I was like really out of shape, man. I had big love handles, and I'd like wear like really tight clothes to try to hold in the love handle so that I didn't look like a fat piece of shit on Fox. Uh, but I don't think I did very well. I still look pretty big out there. But I wore the ribcage protector. That helped a little bit. Maybe they just thought it was that.
Yeah, that's that. Gotta you gotta hide it in when you can, and I've noticed that even about myself, being a comedian now. I travel a lot, so my diet is just garbage. You know what I mean? And I've put on more weight. So I mean, as people can see, yeah, the shirts get a little tighter when you
Yeah,
start to get on there. You want to keep everything in, keep it looking like you're still in shape when you're not.
yeah. See, I've been I've been out in Tennessee since the beginning of the year, and I was I mean, I've always been. I wouldn't say I've ever been just a heavy drinker in the traditional sense of like, oh, I like to drink every day. But I've always been a social drinker, and I've never been much of like, oh, I have alcohol at my house. I'm going to drink it at home, unless it was like, okay, I got something to pregame with friends before we went out. But I'd always been like definitely a drinker, and if I was living somewhere that we went out 4 nights a week, then I'd probably 4 nights a week. And when I got here in Tennessee, one of the things that I really wanted to do was get in better shape. Just one to not look so old, and two for I guess just longevity of life. I'm getting to that age that I got to start taking better care of myself, and so I started working out really hard in the gym and eating good whenever I got here, but I wasn't seeing any kind of results. And then about 3 months ago, I decided to cut out drinking,
Okay.
and I mean in like 10 weeks, I lost like 25 or 30 pounds,
Wow.
and I mean, I'm in really good shape right now. My birthday was, let's say, yesterday. I had a few drinks for my birthday, and some friends are like, "Oh, so you're back?" And I'm like, "No, I was like, I'll drink from time to time. I didn't stop drinking because of like a moral issue or something bad that happened. It's just right now I'm more focused on being in good shape and feeling better and sleeping better, and I'm really enjoying working out, even for all the years that I did have to work out, for teams I was on or schools I was at. I always hated the gym. I was like, man, weights are heavy. Why would I want to lift? But, but dude, I'm loving it now. I mean, I like, I go to bed at night. I'm like, man, I look forward to it like it's game day the next day. I'm like, God, I can't wait to get in the gym tomorrow. And what's made it easy is not a company here in town, like a food prep company. And so it's about $10 a meal, but the macros, and it's all really healthy and the different things, steak, chicken, whatever like that. And I just go pick it up every Sunday, and pretty much that's I pick up 10 meals on Sunday, and I eat around noon and around 6 p.m. So I fast the other 18 hours out of the day. I just drink water or black coffee, and but other than that, like I eat at 12, I eat at 6, and I eat whatever that food is, and other than that, just some whey protein and nothing more.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I know people that do the intermittent fasting,
Mhm.
and it works for them. I do it not because I want to, because my schedule and everything, being comedian, I'm on the road, but I still do work a day job too as well, and that day job is I'm in
Mhm.
sales. So if I take a lunch break, that's sales that I could be missing. So it's
Gotcha.
I eat once a day, and that's a dinner meal. But I'll tell you this, I don't prep that meal at all. It's that meal is the size of like four meals. Like
Yeah,
I
just whatever you want, huh?
but whatever I can. And people
Yeah.
always like, man, how do you like at least look like you stay in shape? It's like, I mean, I eat once a day, but I mean, it's not out of any like diet that I'm doing and that intermittent fasting. It's just literally out of necessity for my jobs and my career. So it works. I can tell you that, at least for me, I've been able to keep at a goal weight at to where I'm trying to be, and really haven't had to change much of my lifestyle. I sit behind a desk, or I'm standing on a stage, with a microphone in my hand. That's pretty much my day to day routines, and I I feel like I'm in pretty good shape for as old as I am, and not going to the gym, and
Yeah.
pretty much. My 14-year-old keeps me in shape because he likes to wrestle around and stuff like that, and he is the size of a full grown man. He's 14. He's 5'11", 250 pounds. So he's a big
Could kick
boy.
my ass.
Yeah. But I want to get into this here first, too, as well. I mean, you obviously Hal Mumme. You've
Mhm.
coached and played for him, but also another former guest of the show, Ernest Wilson. So, take me through what's Hal like, being able to coach with him, because you've gotten both ends. You were a player and you coach for him. So what were the differences when you were on the coaching staff and then, having to go into the games? Was there a difference that you noticed with him, or, what is he like on the sidelines?
He's my relationship with Coach Mummy goes back to 2015. Well, actually, it goes back to about 2011. But in 15, he asked me to come coach for him. We had been in touch at different clinics or emails, phone conversations. He helped me with some things while I was out in Europe and stuff like that. And I went to some of their clinics and it kind of built a relationship with his son Matt, who's offensive coordinator at Colorado State. And yeah, so in 15, he asked me to come coach for him. And so I coached for him at Belhaven College in Mississippi back in 2000. Sorry, my dog is licking his crotch right now and it's really annoying me.
It's all right. Got to stop when it's on camera now.
I just hear this most awful sound over there, and I'm trying to keep my focus. Plus, I always leave Cartoon Zone for my dog whenever I leave. And whenever I got home today, like the screen's frozen on this thing, which is absolutely what nightmares are made of.
Yeah, that is definitely absolutely what nightmares are made of. 100%. That
So I walk in and that's just on the screen, and it looks like this is like a new presidential candidate or something. It's like, I mean, he's orange.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah. Anyway, so coaching with him back in 15 before he knew me very well and things like that, I would give suggestions and he would just kind of, you know, tell me to shut up and go away, things like that. But we built like I don't think he knew how I was as a coach, but we always got along really well as like people and like so I would go back then in my first year coaching with him, he was living kind of like an apartment on top of a hotel in downtown Jackson. And I would go there every Tuesday night and we would watch like the Tuesday night Maction game and we would drink bourbon, smoke cigars, and he would just buy like there's a restaurant, downstairs at there and he would just buy like whatever food we wanted and stuff. So he's always a really, really generous guy. He's always been that way and it's you know, I don't think I've ever been at a meal with him, no matter how many people were with us, that he didn't take care of them. And, he's just really, really generous guy. Um, and so after that year of coaching with him, he came the next year when I was in Rome, Italy, and him and his wife Jacqueline came and visited us for about a week or so. Hung out, got to see all of that, and then got to take them clubbing in Rome. That was fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but and then I go see him in Jackson, different things like that over the years, and we always kept in touch. But then when he asked me to come there in the spring league, it was coming in as a coach, but also because he knew. I mean, I've undoubtedly played in more games in the air raid than any quarterback in world history because I played in the air raid for about 15 seasons, and
Okay.
there's some guys that seem like they played in college for 15 years, but I don't think any of them actually have. Uh, so and nobody really runs it in at the next level. So I think it's safe to say I probably played in more games in offense than anyone has, and so that's kind of what his main reason for wanting me to come was to our quarterback Ryan Willis from Virginia Tech, our starter. He wanted me to come live with Ryan there and mentor him through the offense, be his coach, and do all of that, and then back up if I needed to come in. He knew that I could at least keep the ship afloat. And he often said that I was the MVP of the spring league because all the other teams would split their quarterbacks like 50-50 on reps, and then
Yeah.
they'd play like half the game. And he always says that like I was the MVP of the league because he signed me. Ryan got to take all the reps and got really good, and it was he got the MVP of the league, but I was the real MVP.
Yes.
But like I got to go in and I mean like from basically the beginning, like our second game, I just sent him a game plan. I'm like, what do you think about this game plan? And he emails me back within 30 seconds. It's like, sure, let's run it. And I know damn well he hadn't even like looked at it yet.
Yeah.
But by that point, like, he Ernest told me that he felt like, he listens to me probably more than anybody that he's ever listened to since Leach, which to me is like the coolest thing to hear from,
Yeah.
Ernest, who's been with him for a long time. And but yeah, so I mean, we have a good relationship. We think a lot alike, but obviously we're different people. So I think we kind of ping off each other whenever we're calling games and stuff like that. So from a coaching standpoint, it was a lot of fun. Uh, the game that I did get to go in at quarterback, like I went in, he was pretty pissed at me actually because he was just wanting us to run the ball and get out of there. But I was like, well, shit, it's my time to shine. I want to throw. So I threw the ball. Like I went in and I just called all the play. I never even looked to the sideline. He was probably over there signaling run plays to me, and I'm just out there. I never glanced to the sideline at all. Like I'm gonna call it. So called some runs and stuff. And then we had a run called, and I like threw. We had an option to throw a screen off of it, and I threw a screen, and then Putman, our receiver from Nevada, he played for Coach Mumme's son in Nevada. He just made like a circus run into the end zone. So I threw this little screen out there, and he did all the work, and then I got to be like on a Fox commercial for about a month,
There
like
you go.
jumping into our linemen's arms and stuff, all because Ben made a really good play.
It's about the people around you as quarterback. You know what I mean? That's awesome to hear, to have that relationship, especially with a coach and somebody that was coaching you and that you were coaching with, that you guys can balance that relationship.
Oh,
That's absolutely
oh,
awesome.
yeah, man, it's so awesome because like I remember when I first met him, I was like starstruck because I've been a huge fan of Coach Mumme and Coach Leach ever since they were at Kentucky. I went and watched Tim Couch in Kentucky play against Arkansas at War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock in shootout. My Razorbacks won the game, of course, but uh, I was just blown away by how much they were throwing the football. I was like, man, this is so cool. This is what I want to do. So whenever I play like, you know, PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 NCAA football, I'd always do dynasties with Kentucky, like the hefty lefty Jared Lorenzen, and just go five wide and throw it like every single play. And and I was just like, man, I love this. This is the kind of stuff that I want to do. And so he was always like larger than life to me, kind of. And then when I met him, and it was the same way like when I met Coach Leach, they were more interested. Like they thought it was so cool, like my history in Europe and things like that. That and they're really really inquisitive guys. And the craziest thing is, I probably before I ever even met Coach Leach, I probably heard him talk for 30 hours and probably talked to him some during that because Coach Mumme would have him on speakerphone a lot, and they would just shoot the shit. But I mean, man, it's like the weirdest thing. Like when you hear both of them talk, they sound like the same person on the phone because they're just so they're so laid back, and it's like, hey, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks, Mike. You know, they're but I mean, like great guys, and it was really really we actually me and Coach Mumme went and coached an All Star game in Mexico City uh, at the end of the year and against the Mexican All Stars, and we were at the airport in Mexico City when we got the call about Coach Leach, and that was really tough because he was, I always had people, and I by no means was near as close to him as a ton of people in the community, but I did get to meet him several times, and he was always great dude. Always really enjoyed talking to him, and when people are like, "Well, what was he really like?" and it's like, shit, if you've ever watched one press conference or interview, you know exactly what he was like.
Yeah.
Wasn't 1% different. He was as genuine of a guy as I think you'll ever meet.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick before we roll. I mean that I get that a lot of the time. Being a comedian, people are like, "Well, how do you differ from when you're on stage to when you're off stage? What's your
Mm.
stage persona?" I was just like, "What do you mean stage persona? I'm the same lovable asshole that I am on stage that I am off. Like that.
Yeah.
That's not that's not an act for me." You know, and people were always shocked by that too as well. But I just believe in being genuine, and it sounds like you got a ragtag group around you, especially for coaching with Hal and Ernest, and when Leach was around and having him and everything like that. So that's good to hear and good to have those guys around you. But we are running down near the end of the episode here, and Stan, I do give every guest this opportunity at the end of the show. If there's anything you want to get out there, anything that you got going on, whether it's for coaching, playing, or even if it's just a good message or anything like that, I'm going to give you about a minute and the floor is yours.
I don't think I have too much here. Well, I know, like, I've kind of, if I remember correctly, you found me on Twitter, and I've been, I'd say over the last year and a half, I've probably worked with over 100 coaching staffs, teaching the air raid, and things like that. So just, you know, by name, I'm not very creative. My Twitter's at Stan Bedwell, first last name. Any coaches that are interested in learning the offense or have questions, I'm always happy to help. Setting up Zoom consultations, things like that. Other than that, just probably what Coach Mumme talked about at the end. We're working on that International Football Alliance in Mexico and some of the southern states, and just had another big tryout in December or in Dallas on Sunday. Got another one coming up in Florida soon, and just announced one in Ohio. But we're pretty excited about that. Got that's kind of when you talk about a ragtag bunch. You got Mommy there, and Art Browse has been announced, and it's looking like Nick Rolovich is probably going to be part of the league, and there's a couple other names that Noah Mazzoni's been a part of it for a while now, doing things, but a couple others that I guess can't really talk about yet that are all just as big or if not bigger name than the ones that are in there now. And I think it's going to be a really cool thing. It's been a lot of work put into it, and I think everybody's really skeptical right now about any new leagues that are starting. And um, I think the business plan of it's smart. They're not going out saying, "Hey, we're trying to compete right away with XFL or USFL by how much we're paying or things like that." It's going to be a bit more modest, but I think they're doing it with plans for it to be a long-term thing, and really excited about that. But that's just if you want more information, it's just ifa.football is the website, and it's the International Football Alliance. But yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of news on that coming up now and in the fall. Hoping for a draft's supposed to be set for December, and then supposed to kick off next June. So ready to get back with Coach Mumme and most likely Ernest and a bunch of those guys, and kind of, as Mommy always says, trying to get the band back together.
Absolutely. I've been excited about the IFA since Coach Mumme talked about it on here. So I'm really hoping this gets off the ground for you guys. And I'm really looking forward to getting to see how it all comes together. And it's exciting. I mean, who doesn't want more football? You know what I mean? That's as a football fan myself. Could always use more football. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. I do have to get one new sponsor read in here before we actually end it. And it is actually my own personal coffee brand, Bono's Brew. Just started freshly ground coffee right here in the United States. Ships within 2 to 3 days, and you have it in under a week. Why go to the big box stores when you can have fresh ground coffee spent to you? Have espressos. I have flavors. I even have the K-Cup pods too as well there. You can find all of those at bonosbrew.myshopify.com. You can find it there. Everybody who's listening to this, use the promo code RIDEHOMERANTS, and you will get 5% off of your first purchase. That is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. I want to thank Stan Bedwell and his wonderful dog. I don't even think I got the name of it, but
this is Bobby.
Bobby, for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun to talk to you. As always, if you enjoyed the show, be a friend, tell a friend. If you didn't, tell them anyways. They might like it just because you didn't. That's going to do it for me, and I will see y'all next week.